This story is not meant to be heard after midnight. The envelope arrived silently, sliding through the cracked slot of Evelyn's apartment door like a shadow. She hesitated before picking it up, feeling a strange chill crawl up her spine. Black wax sealed it shut, the kind of wax used for letters from centuries ago. No return address. No markings other than the seal itself, a symbol she didn't recognize but felt eerily familiar. Hands trembling, she broke the wax and unfolded the parchment inside. Ink swirled elegantly across the card, forming words that seemed to pulse faintly under the dim light. You are chosen. Join the voices. Find what only the brave hear. Evelyn blinked. A sudden gust of wind rattled the window panes. The rain outside intensified, tapping sharply against the glass as if demanding her attention. She couldn't explain why, but she felt drawn, compelled to follow the instruction. She studied the words again, noticing that the letters almost shimmered, subtly moving as if alive. Hours later, she found herself standing before the mansion described in the card, on the outskirts of town where the streetlights failed to reach. Its iron gates rose like skeletal fingers, rusted but polished to a haunting shine. Candlelight flickered from some windows despite the heavy rain, creating elongated shadows that swayed unnaturally across the wet stone path. The main door, black and weathered, creaked open as if the house itself exhaled in anticipation. Inside, the air was thick and heavy with the smell of burning incense and something metallic. Iron, perhaps, faint but undeniable. Each step she took echoed in multiple overlapping layers, almost as if the hallway itself spoke in whispers. Words in languages she didn't know seemed to drift along with the sound of her footsteps. Chosen. 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 At the end of the hallway, a hooded figure waited. Its robe was black as midnight, the fabric swallowing light. In one hand, a silver bell gleamed despite the dim surroundings. The figure's voice resonated in multiple tones at once, simultaneously calm and terrifying. You have come. The voices have been waiting for you. Evelyn froze. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Something deep within her recognized the pull of an unseen force, a magnetic dread and curiosity that left her unable to step back. The mansion wasn't merely abandoned. It was alive, aware, and she was now part of its story. The hallway stretched impossibly long, the shadows twisting with every flicker of candlelight. Evelyn's footsteps echoed as if multiple feet followed her, whispering in languages she could almost understand, words bending and breaking her mind's logic. Portraits lined the walls, faces that weren't just painted but seemed to breathe, their eyes following her like predators hiding in plain sight. The hooded figure led her toward a massive stone altar in the center of the hall. Evelyn's gaze fell upon a leather-bound book resting atop it, its gold-etched symbols glinting faintly in the dim light. The whispers grew louder, layering into sentences that penetrated her thoughts. Do you hear us? Do you see the truth? Her pulse raced. The hall's air thickened, almost viscous, pressing against her lungs. Every step felt like wading through invisible water. She reached out tentatively, her fingertips brushing the book's surface, and a sharp electric chill ran up her arm. A candle flared and went out. Shadows stretched across the walls like living things, twisting and writhing, forming fleeting images. Faces screaming silently, hands reaching, eyes opening in impossible ways. Evelyn stumbled backward, heart hammering, but the hooded figure's steady presence urged her forward. Suddenly, one portrait's eyes glowed crimson. From the frame, a spectral figure emerged, whispering secrets in a tongue she couldn't comprehend, yet understood deep in her bones. Her knees nearly buckled, but some invisible force guided her to take another step. The altar's book opened on its own, pages fluttering. Words in gold script rose slightly off the page, shimmering, and a voice in multiple layers murmured, "Chosen. Obey. Become one with the voices." Evelyn realized the voices were not merely around her. They were inside her, probing every fear, every hesitation, every thought. They twisted time, echoing every step she had taken through the hall, overlaying memories of fear she didn't recognize as her own. The hooded figure rang the silver bell. Its chime reverberated through her mind. The whispers fell silent for a heartbeat, then multiplied, cascading into a flood of sound. Thousands of voices, pleading, mocking, demanding. Her skin prickled, hair standing on end, as if the building itself had inhaled her soul. Somewhere deep inside, Evelyn felt the first crack of comprehension. She had been chosen, drawn into a ritual older than memory, and there was no turning back. The Hall of Whispers had claimed her attention, her will, and it would bend her to the voice's design unless she could fight, though she did not yet know how. Evelyn stepped into a room unlike any she had seen before. It was circular, its walls black stone that absorbed the flickering candlelight, making the shadows seem to writhe independently. On the floor, a circle was etched in ash, symbols intertwined in patterns older than language itself. The air vibrated, heavy with expectation and the faint metallic tang of blood. The hooded figure gestured for her to step inside. As her foot crossed the threshold, the whispers surged, louder, sharper, pressing against her skull like invisible fingers. Evelyn realized each voice was distinct, each layered over the other, creating a dissonant chorus that clawed at her consciousness. In the center of the circle lay objects she did not recognize. A chalice black as night, candles that burned with no flame, and a small, intricately carved wooden figure resembling a human but twisted, its features exaggerated and grotesque. She could feel the energy emanating from them, a vibration that resonated deep within her bones. The hooded figure raised the silver bell. Its chime cut through the cacophony like a knife. Shadows around the room seemed to twitch and bend toward the bell's sound, forming faces that screamed silently. Evelyn felt her mind teetering on the edge, a dangerous exhilaration coursing through her. "Do you hear them now?" the figure intoned. "The voices are alive. They speak in echoes of the forgotten and the damned. To listen is to surrender. To surrender is to awaken." Evelyn's gaze drifted to the walls. Figures began to manifest within the stone. Humans, twisted by shadows, their mouths moving but making no sound. They repeated the words the voices fed her in the hallway. "Chosen. Obey. Become one." A cold hand brushed her shoulder, though no one was there. Her reflection in a blackened window showed not herself, but a collage of faces, eyes wide with terror, mouths open in silent screams. She staggered but remained in the circle, drawn forward by a force beyond comprehension. Time distorted. Moments stretched into eternity as the voices whispered secrets of power, of life and death intertwined. Evelyn understood, though terrified. The ritual demanded participation, submission, and the courage to look beyond human comprehension. The circle of shadows was not just a room, it was a gateway, and she had already stepped across its threshold. The hooded figure began to chant, and the room responded. The symbols in ash glowed faintly. The carved figure twitched as if breathing. Evelyn felt the pull of the voices like chains around her spirit, testing her resolve, shaping her for what was to come. The hooded figure's chant grew louder, reverberating through the circular hall, each word carrying weight beyond human comprehension. Evelyn could feel the vibrations deep in her chest, a pulse that synchronized with her heartbeat. The room's shadows rippled, stretching across the walls, reaching toward her as though testing her will. On the altar, the carved wooden figure twitched, its limbs contorting unnaturally. Evelyn's eyes widened. It seemed alive, breathing, and yet there was no air moving. The whispers she had heard before coalesced into a single commanding voice. Obey. Surrender. Awaken. Her hands trembled, but she knew she could not step back. Something inside her stirred, an instinct, a fear, a strange curiosity that demanded participation. She approached the altar cautiously, each footstep echoing like a drumbeat in the silence between whispers. The hooded figure motioned, and the candles on the altar rose slightly above the stone surface, their flames twisting into shapes resembling skeletal hands reaching for the ceiling. Smoke coiled around them, forming ghostly shapes that swirled around Evelyn's feet. She could see faint faces within the smoke, faces that had been lost to time, drawn to the ritual like moths to a flame. Evelyn reached out toward the chalice on the altar, its black surface reflecting her pale face. The moment her fingers brushed the rim, the whispers became screams, not in her ears, but inside her skull. Pain and ecstasy, fear and fascination, all mingled into one overwhelming sensation. The hooded figure rang the silver bell again, and the room responded as if alive. The symbols etched in ash glowed, twisting into new patterns that no human could decipher. Evelyn felt the air thicken, pressing against her lungs, making it hard to breathe, yet impossible to look away. She realized the voices were testing her. Each whisper, each spectral movement, each shadowed gesture was a challenge, to bend her will, to find her courage, to make her see what others could not. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, trying to steady herself, to anchor her mind against the tide of voices pressing inward. When she opened them, the room had transformed subtly. The shadows more defined, the candle flames sharper, the air alive with anticipation. She understood now that the ritual had begun. The circle of shadows was no longer just a room. It was a living entity, a sentient force that demanded her submission while offering knowledge and power that no mortal mind should possess. The hooded figure stepped closer, lifting the silver bell. Its sound pierced the room, slicing through the chaos of overlapping voices. Each strike reverberated, shaking the very walls, and the shadows writhed in response, forming human shapes twisted with agony. Evelyn's chest tightened. She realized the voices were not merely sounds. They were alive, feeding off her fear and curiosity alike. She stumbled backward, but her feet met only cold stone. Every step she had taken through the hallways, every breath she drew, had led her here. The circle of ash beneath her glowed faintly, as if alive, pulsing in time with the layered whispers that had now become a singular, commanding voice. Join us. Surrender. Awaken. The carved wooden figure on the altar twitched violently, its limbs bending unnaturally. A faint metallic scent filled the air, mingling with the smoke and incense, sharp enough to make her gag. Yet something compelled her forward. Her hand trembled as she reached for the black chalice, and the moment she touched it, the voices screamed inside her mind, simultaneously pleading and threatening. From the ceiling, shadows descended like tendrils, wrapping around the floating candles. They formed faces, screaming, crying, and smiling all at once. Evelyn realized these were not illusions, but fragments of souls, trapped in the mansion's ritual for decades, perhaps centuries. Their pain, their terror, and their obedience all merged into the voices she now heard as one. Her heart pounded as the hooded figure rang the bell again, faster this time, faster until the sound became a piercing, vibrating tone inside her skull. The ash circle glowed brighter, illuminating the carved figure and casting Evelyn's elongated shadow across the walls. She felt the pull, a magnetic force urging her to bend, to accept, to join. And then, a singular thought struck her. She could resist. The voices, no matter how powerful, depended on fear. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the physical world, and focused on the candle flames. Slowly, deliberately, she stepped to the center of the circle, ready to confront the ritual, to face the voices not as prey, but as a witness. For a heartbeat, silence fell. Then, the shadows twisted violently, as though aware of her defiance. The ritual was not over. It had only begun, and Evelyn was now irrevocably entangled in the circle of shadows. Evelyn felt the weight of the room pressing against her chest. The whispers had evolved, no longer simply voices but demands echoing directly inside her skull. The carved figure on the altar shuddered, its grotesque features twisting toward her as if measuring her resolve. Shadows writhed around the candle flames, shaping into forms that mimicked human movement, creeping, lunging, retreating, all simultaneously. The hooded figure moved silently, circling the room, bell in hand, each strike punctuating the rhythm of the ritual. Evelyn's mind began to fracture under the pressure of the overlapping sounds and spectral motions. Chosen, obey, bend, become. The words drilled into her consciousness, compelling her to act. Suddenly, one shadow detached from the walls, coalescing into a human form. Its face was obscured, but its eyes glowed a pale, sickly yellow. It stepped toward Evelyn, mirroring her every movement, anticipating her hesitation. She realized this was the first test, the ritual demanding proof of courage, focus, and resolve. She clenched her fists, grounding herself. She would not falter. The shadow advanced, voiceless yet deafening in its presence, and she met its gaze. Her heart thundered, sweat pricking her skin, yet she held firm, taking deliberate steps forward, refusing to flee. The hooded figure rang the bell. Each chime resonated through the stone, echoing in her bones, reinforcing the voice's insistence. The carved figure on the altar began to move more violently, limbs twisting as if alive, its grotesque eyes locking on hers. The whispers merged into a chorus that was almost musical, hypnotic, urging surrender. Evelyn's chest burned, lungs aching, but she focused. One step, then another. She circled the shadow, observing its form, noticing every imperfection, every twitch. Slowly, she realized the shadow was not trying to harm her. It was testing her awareness, measuring her fear. She stopped, held the carved figure's chalice in both hands, and whispered, "I see you. I am here. I do not fear." The room shivered. The shadows hesitated. The voices paused, almost curious, as if acknowledging her declaration. For the first time since entering, Evelyn felt a subtle shift in the air. The ritual was testing her, yes, but it was also teaching her. She was no longer merely prey, she was a participant. And with that realization, the circle of shadows grew quiet for a fleeting heartbeat, preparing for the next stage. The air shifted in the circle of shadows, thickening as though the room itself had drawn a deep breath. Evelyn felt it pressing against her skin, a tangible weight that made every movement deliberate. The whispers, once chaotic, had coalesced into a singular voice, low and resonant, seeping into her mind like ink spreading through water. You are ready. We are watching. Awaken. The carved figure on the altar trembled violently, its limbs jerking in impossible angles. Candle flames bent toward it as if drawn by an invisible current, their light illuminating grotesque shapes in the surrounding shadows. Evelyn's heart pounded, every nerve screaming with anticipation and terror. A sudden gust of cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the floating candles. Darkness enveloped her. She could no longer see the stone walls, the altar, or the hooded figure. Only the shadows remained, swirling, alive, whispering directly into her consciousness. She shivered, but she did not move backward. Then, a voice different from the rest spoke clearly in her mind, a soft, almost melodic tone. You feel it too, don't you? The power, the truth, the awakening. It was not commanding. It was tempting. Evelyn realized the voices were offering her something beyond fear, beyond comprehension, insight, vision, and power, but at a price she did not yet understand. The hooded figure's bell rang once more. Its sound cut through the darkness, sharp and deliberate, echoing like a blade. Shadows solidified into forms, faces screaming, figures writhing, ghostly hands reaching toward her. Each movement synchronized with the voice's words, forming a living rhythm that pulled her toward the center of the ritual. Evelyn's hands trembled as she lifted the black chalice from the altar. A subtle glow emanated from within it, illuminating the faces in the shadows, some pleading, some mocking, all watching her. The ritual demanded not just attention, but acknowledgement. She had to confront the voices, not flee from them. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the heart of the circle, closing her eyes. The shadows coiled around her like serpents, whispering secrets of forgotten knowledge and hidden truths. She felt her mind stretch, bending to the will of the voices while simultaneously resisting, balancing on the edge between submission and defiance. For the first time, Evelyn understood. The awakening was not about power alone. It was about perception, courage, and the choice to face what mortals were never meant to see. And as the room shuddered and the shadows danced violently, she embraced the first tremors of understanding, becoming part of the ritual, yet retaining herself. The room seemed to breathe around Evelyn, walls contracting and expanding with each pulse of the ritual. Shadows had become tangible, twisting like living smoke, crawling along the floor and walls, reaching toward her feet. She could feel the chill of them brushing against her skin, testing her resolve, measuring her fear. The hooded figure stood silently at the edge of the circle, bell in hand, its presence both commanding and spectral. The carved figure on the altar contorted further, limbs bending in impossible angles, eyes glowing faintly red as if feeding off her fear. Evelyn's pulse quickened, but a strange calm settled over her mind, a focus sharpened by the magnitude of the ritual. The voices spoke now in clarity, no longer whispers but commands and temptations threading through her thoughts. Descend. Surrender. Understand. Evelyn's vision shifted, the walls melting into darkness, revealing a staircase spiraling downward, carved from stone that seemed older than time itself. She realized the descent was the next stage, an initiation that would take her deeper into the mansion's secrets and the voices' domain. She stepped forward, the floating candles igniting spontaneously along the staircase. Their flames danced violently, casting long shadows that writhed along the steps like serpents. Every step echoed loudly, overlapping with a chorus of ghostly whispers that now carried the weight of centuries. Evelyn's grip on the chalice tightened. The glow from its surface illuminated fleeting faces in the shadows, faces pleading, cursing, laughing. Halfway down, a sudden scream, harsh and piercing, shook the staircase. The shadows coiled violently, twisting into humanoid forms with hollow eyes. Evelyn stumbled but steadied herself. She understood that fear was part of the descent. Each terror was a test of her mind, her courage, and her will to confront the unknown. The hooded figure's bell chimed again. Its sound resonated in the staircase, bouncing off the stone and mingling with the voices. Evelyn felt a surge of energy coursing through her. The descent was not punishment, it was revelation, a confrontation with what mortals were never meant to encounter. Step by step, she moved forward, her awareness sharpening. The ritual demanded not just participation, but perception. Every shadow, every whisper, every trembling candle flame was a lesson. Evelyn realized that each motion, each sound, each echo was shaping her, preparing her for the awakening that awaited at the bottom of the spiral. At the bottom of the spiraling staircase, Evelyn stepped into a vast chamber, the ceiling disappearing into darkness above. The air was thick and suffocating, saturated with the scent of incense, iron, and something indefinably ancient. Shadows pooled across the floor, forming shapes that seemed to breathe, sway, and stretch toward her like living entities. The hooded figure motioned for her forward. As she walked, the shadows reacted to her presence, rippling and coiling, forming figures that resembled humans yet defied reality. Faces she could not place stared at her from every angle, some pleading, some mocking, others silently screaming. The whispers escalated into a chorus of demands, promises, and threats, all layering into a singular, overwhelming voice. Step into the heart. See what is hidden. Embrace the voices. At the center of the chamber lay a circular platform, etched with symbols that glowed faintly, pulsating in rhythm with the voices. The carved wooden figure rested atop it, now fully animated, limbs writhing unnaturally, eyes blazing crimson. Evelyn's hands shook as she placed the black chalice upon the platform, feeling the hum of unseen energy surge through her fingertips. The chamber responded immediately. Shadows stretched upward, merging into colossal forms that towered over her, their whispers now intelligible in fragmented phrases. Knowledge, power, fear, submission. She understood that the voices were revealing the mansion's secrets, truths older than memory itself, but only those brave enough to endure the terror could perceive them. A sudden wave of cold swept the chamber. Evelyn's breath misted in the frigid air, and her pulse thundered in her ears. The hooded figure rang the silver bell 3 times in rapid succession. The sound sliced through the shadows, momentarily stabilizing them before they surged violently, twisting around her in a living whirlwind. Evelyn felt herself teetering on the edge of comprehension, mind straining under the weight of centuries of whispered knowledge. Every step forward, every heartbeat, every shadowed glance challenged her sanity. Yet, she pressed on, driven by an unexplainable combination of fear, curiosity, and the desire to see the truth behind the ritual. Finally, she stood at the center of the platform, surrounded by shadows that pulsated and breathed with life. For a brief heartbeat, silence fell. The voices paused, waiting for her choice: submission, defiance, or understanding. Evelyn closed her eyes, centering herself, and prepared to face the culmination of the ritual, the ultimate confrontation with the circle of shadows itself. Evelyn stood at the center of the glowing platform, surrounded by shadows that writhed like living serpents. The carved wooden figure pulsated with crimson energy, its limbs jerking in impossible angles, casting grotesque reflections across the chamber. The voices, the culmination of centuries of whispers, secrets, and lost souls, echoed through her mind. Choose, embrace, ascend, or be consumed. The hooded figure raised the silver bell one final time. Its chimes sliced through the heavy air, reverberating through the chamber and through Evelyn's very bones. The shadows froze for a heartbeat, waiting, watching, testing the resolve of the mortal before them. Evelyn's heart pounded, sweat ran down her face. She could feel the pull of the ritual, the temptation to surrender completely and gain knowledge and power beyond mortal comprehension. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet her curiosity anchored her. She looked into the eyes of the colossal shadow forms surrounding the platform. They were not merely shapes. They were the embodiment of every soul claimed by the ritual, every whisper that had ever been spoken, every fear, every desire. She realized that the choice was not simple. Submission meant power, but loss of self. Defiance meant freedom, but potential annihilation. Her hands trembled as she lifted the black chalice, feeling the surge of energy from the carved figure flow through her veins. The chamber seemed to pulse with her heartbeat, the shadows responding in rhythm. She inhaled sharply and focused, summoning every ounce of courage, every fragment of clarity. In that moment, Evelyn understood. The ritual was not designed to destroy her, nor merely to empower. It sought understanding, a merging of mortal will and the voice's ancient consciousness. She closed her eyes and whispered her choice. I see you. I accept, but I remain myself immediately. The shadows recoiled and then coalesced, forming intricate patterns around her. The carved figure froze, its limbs relaxing, eyes glowing with serene red light. The voices surged in a crescendo of sound and sensation, but instead of overwhelming her, they harmonized, flowing through her mind like a river, revealing truths, visions, and knowledge while allowing her consciousness to remain intact. Evelyn opened her eyes. The chamber was still, the shadows now elegant, flowing, almost protective. The ritual had ended, but its impact would linger, a permanent mark on her mind. She had survived, understood, and emerged changed. Not consumed, not corrupted, but awakened. She stepped off the platform, the hooded figure vanishing into shadow, leaving only the echo of whispers fading into silence. Outside, the first light of dawn touched the mansion, But Evelyn knew she would never forget the circle of shadows, the voices, or the choice she had made. If you're still here, it means it found you too.